Guacamole. Now I'm an omnivore, I like to eat all kinds of things, but I prefer whole, good, healthy foods. Avocados, I'm not going to start cutting them first because it's going to mess up my cutting board. I'm going to start with the least messy, and this is one of my deviations from a traditional recipe. This is a nice fat slice of bell pepper, and what I do is simply chop it up. It's going to add texture and flavor that's not in a traditional recipe, and you don't have to be perfect with your sizes, but you want to be somewhat uniform. And if you think they're too big, you can always just give it another hit. In your bowl, this is a 6-cup bowl. It's going to make about 2 cups of guacamole. There's a jalapeno pepper. Now, me personally, I like stuff hot, but if you don't like it hot, you might want to use a poblano pepper, or some pepper that's mildly hot, or like I just did, the bell pepper. Now a poblano pepper is that nice dark green pepper, but it's thin-walled and it's very mildly hot. So it's going to be a little chillier than your bell pepper. And these I'm just going to chop up slightly. I like big chunks. Some people don't like big chunks of hot stuff. I do. Now this is habanero. Now these I grew in my garden also. This was in my freezer. It's been in my freezer since the end of the season, and that breaks down some of the heat, and as you can see it's seeded. That's what I do. I cut them up, seed them, and freeze them, and they last all winter. They're good for 6 months, and it's going to add excellent flavor to my guacamole. And because it's been broken down a little bit in the freezer, it's not going to be as hot. Very hot pepper though, you might want to skip it. I'm going to use 1 small onion. It's going to give me about 1/4 cup. That's about right for 2 cups of guacamole. I'm going to chop this up fine. See, my method of chopping up fine is I'll cross cut it and come back around this way. And don't try to be a Speedo expert with your knife if you're not a Speedo expert. If you're not doing it every day, you're probably not a Speedo expert. So take your time and don't cut your fingers off. You can always go back for another chop if you feel they're too big this way. Whoa, it's a big knife. About right for me. Tomatoes. Tomatoes are out of season right now, so they're slightly less sweet than normal. And for this recipe you need about a 1/2 cup of tomato. Now just like the pepper, I'm going to slice it one way and then cross cut it, and that's going to give me about the size chunks that I want. You can see because these tomatoes are out of season, they can be a little bit mealy. They're not as crisp and sweet as normal, but they'll still work fine. And again, cut the size chunks that you like. And if you have big pieces, just go back over it again. Now because they're out of season, they're slightly less sweet, so a little pinch of sugar will help. Then add it to your bowl. Avocado is the main ingredient in your dish here. What I do is simply go this way, back that way, back that way. Give it a twist. Try to hit the center. Twist. Pops right out. Okay? And then if you have a spoon, just catch it in right about there so you don't get the stem end. And simply work it around. And it pops right out. Like so. Now avocados are very bland, fatty fruit. I really enjoy them. With some people, you might need to develop a taste for them. Try them with a little salt. Putting them in a dish like guacamole will probably help you adjust to the taste of this fruit if you're not used to it. And I do suggest when you make the guacamole, you chop this up quite well because it's going to be a lot easier to mix up. Alright, I've got my 3 avocados chopped in the bowl. I need to season it. Teaspoon of salt. I'm using a very coarse sea salt. You use whatever salt fancies you. And I'm going to need a tablespoon of lime juice. Now, half a lime is going to give you about a tablespoon of lime juice. If you don't trust that measurement, get out the old measuring spoon. But I've found that the average lime contains about 2 tablespoons of lime juice. And before we add the pepper, we're going to give it a good mix. Of course, I'm using fresh ground pepper. These aren't expensive. You can get them in most grocery stores. Besides a mix, I give it a little mash with the spoon. Top it off with some fresh ground pepper, as much as you desire. I like a lot. Guacamole. I recommend covering it and putting it in the fridge for a couple hours at least to let those flavors mingle. And when you pull it out, it's going to be nice and juicy and full of flavor. And you're going to want to eat this with chip that's going to hold something in it. In sticking with healthy, I've chosen a chip that has 3 ingredients: corn, salt, and vegetable oil. The less ingredients, usually the better when it comes to things like chips. Now, doesn't that look good? That's what I'm talking about. It's colorful and the flavors just bounce out of there.